What's in your hobby wallet?
Spiky bits.
Welcome back, Hobby Maniacs. I'm Rob Bear from SpikyBits.com. Today, I would like to talk to you, or give you my thoughts at least, on Games Workshop's pricing in general, because I feel like times are tough for everybody out there, and the dollar doesn't stretch, or the euro or the pound sterling doesn't stretch, or the New Zealand dollar, the Australian dollar. You guys know what I'm saying. It just doesn't stretch as far as it used to, and I think everybody is becoming more cognizant of their hobby dollars. And you know, it's crazy because originally I wanted this to be an unboxing build of the new Cadian shock troopers with the upgrade sprue for the special weapons and stuff. I was kind of thinking about it, and the whole video just kind of morphed in my mind because I was like, it kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't. And then I started looking at more and more of Games Workshop's products, and I was just like, you know what? It's hard to put your finger on it, but I wanted to show you what this sprue of plastic goes for versus this sprue of plastic, just to get your thoughts and you thinking, whether it's Dominion, Indominus, you know, whatever's allocated out there, 2 copies of Bellicor per store or whatever. It's all about getting the best value out there when it comes to the hobby. And I think once we take a look at this and try to narrow it all down, and I definitely want to talk about the Cadian sprue, because this is something that we haven't quite seen GW do before, so I think it's worth spending a little bit of time on. So this is the Cadian Shock Trooper, the new box. It used to sell for $34 recently. I remember a time, I think when these were $25. And all it is this, the existing Cadian Shock Trooper sprues, which were produced in 2005, and it combined this upgrade sprue. Now, you're probably like, well, that doesn't quite make sense. And I think GW in a way is a little very clever in doing it this way, because with getting this sprue, you get one of everything on here for special weapon wise that you can put with the squad. You get, some female heads, some, it looks like a little camouflage cap sort of head thing here. The grenade launcher is already on the other sprue, so you don't have to worry about that. You get some upgrades for the sergeant in the sprue, and that's basically it. I was like, well, you know what? There's the Cadian, the Cadian Command Squad, which this actually sells for $34, the same as the previous guard box. This squad of 5 dudes is 2 of these longer sprues, right, which are basically 4 of these, okay? And it comes with all the duders and everything, but if you look at it, you're like, oh wait, that's got a plasma on it. So I was like, oh crap, did they redesign it? And they did actually redesign it. Those are 2 different plasma rifles. You can see on the inside of the shoulder right there, it has the opening on it. So they actually went through and did all this stuff on the computer. So in theory, they could port this over to other stuff. Now, me personally, I kind of get why they did that, because, in theory, there's really nothing wrong with the Cadians. I mean, they're not out of scale when you put them together. The Cadians are pretty much in scale with each other. They're not like the Catachans, which are definitely have muscles that probably don't exist, and they're a little bit out of scale with each other. So just the fact that they didn't have to go back and reinvent the wheel and create new kits, because new kits definitely cost money to develop and do all sorts of things on. So they basically put this sprue in there, right? And I was like, well, what can we compare this to? So I started thinking about it, and I got some ideas of what is very similar to the sprue. So if you look at some of the older stuff, like this is the Chaos Lord for Chaos Space Marines. These sprues are about the same size, but you get 2 in here to make this. This sells for $30 right now. This is also from 2005, I believe? 2006, excuse me. And then you've got this Orc Duder here, which sells for $35, and he is a whole squad himself. So it seems like they'll do upgrades, right? But if an upgrade is just part of another thing, it's a little bit discounted. But if it's a character, it's like $30 or $35. But some characters even are the one sprue kind of character thing for $35. Like this is actually half of the Cryptek. The new Cryptek is actually 2 sprues, which is one of these. But in a lot of cases, GW special characters are just one of these sprues for $35. Which, a lot of people pointed out in the action figure reviews and things we did for the McFarlane figures that are basically $20. Like, it's literally cheaper than the one sprue, the plastic model. I was like, that really kind of gives me some ideas for how I think they're trying to price this stuff. Now take a look at this. This is also an upgrade sprue from Games Workshop. This is the Goliath. They also did one for the Eschers. It's literally 2 exact same sprues that go together and form a $25 kit. And that sprue is the same exact size as the Cadian upgrade sprue, but you get 2 of them for $25. So in theory, in GW money, it's kind of a value, because if one of these is $12.50 and you put 2 together, you get $25 for this upgrade here for the Goliath or the Eschers. When you put one of these sprues together, it's only worth $11 because it raises the price of the Cadians from $34 to $45. So in GW money, it makes sense. I get that. Then you start thinking about some of this other stuff here, like if we go to this, the Dark Angels upgrade sprue for the Primaris, that's that half size. That's that 1 character size, or one of those Cryptek sprues I just showed you. And this bad boy right here is $15. Now, they started putting out packs of 2 of these with a decal sheet for $25. They've all sold out since. So in theory, that would be a good value, right? If you're building a Dark Angels army, you would be like, okay, well, $25, I get a decal sheet, okay. But just buying one of these single for $15 doesn't seem like a good value. But you can get a bunch of these in the Combat Patrol box for the Dark Angels. It comes with a few of them. And they don't really kind of factor it into the price, which is really surprising. There's times when things are valued, but times when things also seem to be valued. So we've got the new Warsong Revenant from Age of Sigmar, right? Must have for Sylvaneth players like myself out there. It's $55. Now this comes on 3 sprues, just like so, which each one of these sprues is the same size as one of those Cadian upgrade sprues, right? So when it forms a figure, it seems like this sprue is now become more than $11, more than $15. This is more upwards of $17.50, more towards $20 for this right here. And this is the same format that things like the Outriders came on. As a matter of fact, this is the same format that some of the stuff in the new Dominion box is too. So, you know, like the Annihilators, the new Roman Greco kind of looking dudes with sword and board, spear and shield, right? Those guys are all very similar to this, and this is $55. Then we've got bigger kits. We got Lord Croak at $115, and the Slaaneshi Twins at $110. $5 apart doesn't seem like, you know, a really big deal, right? I ain't mad at that. But then when you start looking at the sprues on the inside, this is basically 2 of those sections I just showed you. 6 Cadian upgrades worth here for $110 or $115, you know, kind of take your pick there, right? And this isn't dissimilar from Warhammer 40k either. It's just there's not as many examples to the scale in Warhammer 40k. For instance, the Trigon is 1 sprue, and I believe it's $80 or $90 just for 1 sprue, just like this. So in theory, if you had something like this, it would technically, I guess, be worth more, because, you know, half of 80 is 40 and 120. I feel like I'm in a Jim Carrey movie here. There's definitely more points. Just hang in there for a minute. And then we've got the recent big baddie from Sigmar, Kragnos, right? He's $160. Now we unboxed and built this guy here on the channel already, but he is 2 full box sprues. So if we're talking Trigon, which I believe is 80, that actually makes sense, because 2 sprues, you know, it seems to be on point. But then when you start thinking about it, like, this is an $11 sprue. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's only $44. 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting. It gets a little bit crazier. We crank it up to 11 here, because we haven't even talked about bundle deals. You know, things like Dominion, things like Indominus, you know, super high interest, and kind of a little, you know, marketed manipulation by GW with the whole FOMO thing that we've talked about already. Speaking of Indominus, right? So this is the Space Marines Honored of the Chapter, right? It's got these cool dudes, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. You got Eradicators, you got Blade Guard, you got you know, some characters in here like a Chaplain. It's $35. Banner Bear, you know, Ancient, $35, right? The new Vindicary, Judicari, Judy Chop. We don't know. He hasn't existed. I don't know. Maybe $35. But remember, these are all monopose, like push fit, basically, right? Just like Dominion. So you're like, okay, well, it's $140. That's like a chapter. That's like a Combat Patrol, right? I guess that's good value. I mean, it comes like this because that is how the sprue is together in the box of Indominus. And through all the iterations, the command version, the smaller versions, on down to the No Fear version, or whatever it's called, that was like $60. This was the one thing that the Games Workshop couldn't cut up and couldn't chop up and couldn't break down and repackage again and sell to retailers again as part of the stuff that they're required to carry on their shelves. Because they've always said these Indominus and Dominion, they're limited edition. They're not for starting out. They're just for collecting. They're for collectors. They're for veterans. And then they put out a starter the next month. And I'm sure the same thing's going to happen to Dominion. But where it gets even curiouser is this is one of those big sprues that I just showed you, the Trigon or whatever costs $80. And this guy is one sprue for the same price as the $140 Space Marine set. And I remember a time when this guy was $65. Oh wait, he comes with two sprues. Oh, he comes with two sprues. So two sprues for $80 is the same material-wise as those Space Marines I just showed you from Indominus. So I guess when you look at it like that, it kind of makes sense in GW terms that when you look at this other item here that they actually suggest to you, which is one of the other parts of a previous starter. Now that would be Dark Imperium. So Dark Imperium, kind of the same thing, but it wasn't exactly constructed the same, but it did have these guys on it, including the Ancient that was never released separately except for this. 5 push fit intercessors, 2 different lieutenants. But if you look at this, that is a half sprue. Not the whole sprue, that's the half sprue. But again, in Cadian upgrade terms, that's 2 times 11 or $22. Again, I feel like I'm in a Jim Carrey movie. I'm just trying to show you that how all these things kind of relate to each other internally kind of makes sense, but then when you look at it from the big picture like I'm doing here, which could be considered taken out of context of sorts, it tends to kind of like, well, I don't get how that makes sense pricing wise to me. And then we've got the hot topic of, well, I don't know, the week, the month, I don't know what's going on. Judging by my video, which thank you for watching my little rant about Dominion. So we've got it here officially on Sprue, which we didn't quite have before. But I wanted to show you kind of what I was talking about, and this is the same as that Space Marine offering. This is kind of how they're going to do that eventually. So you've got the Cruel Boys side, which it isn't quite the same because you're not going to get 2 squads, you're not going to get the Eradicators, you're not going to get the Blade Guard, you're not going to get, the other characters. This is just one squad, like the Shooty Boys, I forget what they're called, and the Kill Boss on large snarly thing. But this is the same size sprue. It's that big sprue that you get two of them in a Trigon for 80, or you get one sold separately from that Indominus offering I just showed you for 140. And then of course you've got the Stormcast version of this. But I did want to show you one other thing that was curious that makes me think, some of these are done separately, so they're going to probably be released as a $35 kit, like some of the character models, right? And this was the guy that was narrating the video, and that was really cool. Great video, amazing stuff. But I wanted to show you the Annihilators, I think they're called, are on a very similar size sprue. I can't quite find them. Well, we'll go with the troop guys here, right? So these are basically going to be a sprue, 2 identical sprues. So they'll be offered separately, probably because they're easy to build, to push fit, just like we saw with the Necron Warriors, just like we saw with the Outrider bikes. There's going to be things in here that are offered separately, and there's going to be things that are offered multi-part. But these are very much on point with ways we've seen them before. And then here's the Stormcast version that's got the 3 chonky Annihilators, the Banner guy, the Vigilant guy, I think he's called, and the new big bad hero, what's her face. But they all look great. They all go together great. Amazing dynamic sculpts. All the mold lines, all the gaps are cleverly hidden. They're wizards at making models. To take it from this, it literally just push fit it together. I've showed you this in our unboxing video. It's amazing stuff. But at $199 for the whole box, this is something that we're going to see a year from now, probably for $140, just for that half sprue, which I already broke that down. Like, this half sprue is 4 of the Cadian upgrade sprues, which are $11 each. So when you start kind of grabbing it in chunks, you're like, that's interesting. And then we'll just take it to the top. We'll just go all the way with this one. Here's the Baneblade. This kit has been around since, I don't know, 2007, 2006, something like that. Groundbreaking shit at its time. People lost their minds when this thing came out. It was actually 2 different kits when it came out. Surprisingly, they just did the basic Baneblade, and then they came out with a separate kit that was all the variants, which really was just an extra sprue or two that built off the actual kit. And I bought 3 of these when they first came out, and they were not cheap. I want to say they were 115, 120, which was good value at the time, because the Forge World kit was something stupid like 150 or 175. It was basically infinity monies at the time in the early 2000s. You know, $175 for a resin kit was like, no, maybe it was just my outlook on things, but it wasn't even a consideration. And then when this came out in plastic for closer to $100, I was like, I need 3, because that makes sense. But, you know, it makes sense to us at the time, right? So this kit eventually got combined. You get all of the variants in this kit now, which is a tremendous value compared to back then, because you'd end up with 2 chassis and 2 different kits. And that's what gave rise to the Octo Baneblade, where you can literally make all 8 variants. And I've showed you in a tutorial, you can look it up here on YouTube, how to do this. And it's great. It's amazing stuff. Groundbreaking shit in 2007, groundbreaking shit when they combined it. Still a very amazing, groundbreaking kit, and they're just getting better and better at this stuff. But look at this. It's 7 sprues. It's $140. The same price as those Space Marines from Indominus that are push fit. It's 7 of those sprues. 7. The next thing I could think of was the Lord of Skulls, which is 8 of the same identical sprues for $160. It's kind of easy to nitpick the pricing. You know, we know that a lot of this, obviously, the cost to actually produce it pales in comparison to what the retail price is. And, you know, that's always been the exchange for everything out there retail-wise across the board, you know, because the middleman has to make their money. The stores have to make their money, and by the time it gets to us, the end user, you know, that's the final price. That's the top, and that's where the money stops, basically. So just remember that in a lot of cases, there's great alternatives out there for a lot of these miniatures. And yes, I know some of you are going to comment that, hey, if I want to play in a G-Dub event, I can't have X, Y, Z. And I think while that is true in a lot of cases, you know, it is their event, it's their rules. My house, my rules. I get that, you know, but I think they're also respectful if you email them and you're like, yo, you know, email the events people. You know, I've seen a lot of folks doing that and reporting in that they had pretty favorable outcomes from like, hey, I don't have to repaint all this into detachment, or it's okay to print these parts. Like I've literally know people designing various bits and things to go on their miniature. They're literally designing them and printing them out for their miniatures, not commercially available. And, you know, that I think is the spirit of the hobby as far as the Games Workshop hobby, right? There are ways to do the things you want to do. I think we need to remember there's an objective, right? Where are we going to play with this stuff? Are we going to play with it at our local game store that wants to sell us stuff, that maybe even sells alternate stuff? So it's no big deal. But if you're going to a GW event, which remember, there's only 3 of them this year. There's probably going to be more. That's probably their ultimate more Warhammer all the time kind of goal, right? And that could be good or bad. Just keep in mind, your models are your models. Don't let anybody tell you how to play with your models, what colors to paint your models. They're your models. This is all fantasy land, magical Christmas land, as I've heard on some Marvel Crisis Protocol. A great game that you should definitely check out. It's your hobby. We do this to get away from the real world, and having restrictions put on us as hobbyists, how we got to paint our stuff, how we got to play with our stuff, the models we can play. When I think Games Workshop kind of loses focus because some of their stuff is so old, getting a little upgrade sprue and boom, you're good. You're back in the game, guys. Get in there. Go get them. It's been 16 years. You're about to graduate college or high school. Which one is it? Both. College. Going into college. Get back in there and get on gaming. It kind of loses the mark when you got models that are literally from 1999. So I understand how everybody wants to do it, but you kind of have to remember, always vote with your hobby dollars, because that is how everything is going to work in the future, because all the trends are changing. Just keep in mind, when you see a product from any manufacturer, whether it's a resin boutique, great looking stuff from somebody like Artel or somebody like Wargame Exclusive, or dope creature caster models that would work great on the tabletop, you know, there is a value to everything. And at the end of the day, we just got to remember whether it's this version of a plastic sprue, this version of a plastic sprue, this version, or 8 plastic sprues, vote with your hobby dollars, because that is going to determine how we're treated by retailers in the future, because there is a revolution coming. It's 3D printing. We all know it. And it's right around the corner. So everybody has to be very mindful of how they treat people, but also it's a lot easier to just buy something off the shelf than wait for it to 3D print. We're not quite there yet. We're not Star Trek quite yet. So there's a risk versus reward, and there's a time factor to everything. We still have the power in our hobby wallets. So just remember, try to vote with your hobby dollars whenever possible, whether it's buying direct from Games Workshop because you don't have a store near you, or you hate the store near you. I get it. Believe me, long story there. There's always a way to get the best value for your hobby dollars. It's just about taking a big look at things and figuring out where to spend them. Thank you very much for watching. I have a lot more stuff to talk about as far as like Games Workshop and their allocations. I have a lot of inside stories. A lot of people I've talked to, a lot of rumors out there. I'd love to tell them. So if you like these kind of videos, I'd like to keep doing them. We'll see. I'm more focused on actual products, but this Cadian one was a little weird. It's just really hard. It's like, you know, it's like shooting a moving target. It's kind of hard to put the value on this, because it has a certain value that we talked about in one way and another value in another way, you know. So hit us up over on Patreon. Normally I'd show you all the levels and stuff. It's end of the month. We got a lot going on here. So if you want to mince your crate, jump over there, sign up for one of the levels that's currently open, or really just wait till July 1st. It's probably better for you anyways. There's a link to Patreon below as well. And that's it. Thanks for watching, y'all. Hey, you still there? Let me just hit you with this real quick and I'll get out of here. So the thing I wanted to admit, I think is on everybody's mind and probably going to be the first comment. I think in a lot of cases you could make the argument that Games Workshop may price stuff, because as we saw by the escalating, Nottingham Sprue nesting doll, that the sprues don't seem to make sense when you compare them on a large macro scale, but they make sense when you compare them at a smaller scale kind of to each other in GW money, of course. There's definitely a component to how much use the model will get. Some stuff that you're going to buy multiples of is a bit cheaper, but something that you're going to buy one of, like the Gaunt's Ghost, is $65, whereas a box of Cadians is, you know, 45 now, previously 36. So I think a lot of that comes into play, and there's really no way for any of us to kind of know how that all works into the components and into the things. But big showpiece models are going to cost more, and the stuff that you're going to buy more of aren't going to cost as much, because you do have to buy more of them. But they're generally more readily available, except for in COVID times where we saw boxes of Death Guard and Sisters of Battle going for $100 on the secondary market, which was just silly. So I just wanted to mention, but definitely leave your thoughts below about what you think the pricing model is, what you think a sprue is worth, whether it's worth a certain amount per the size of the material, or if it's more about how useful the models are in game, and your favorite alternative models out there, because there's so many of them. That's it. I'm out of here.